Welcome to Tansson TV Plus. Of course, I'm Brandon,
And I'm Mom.
and thank you so much for joining us. We always love doing this, and Mom, I hope that you're doing well.
I am doing well today, Brandon. How are you doing?
I am doing well, and Mom, what show are we speaking about here today? What are we doing today?
Today we're going to talk about living single.
Yes, and so we are excited to get into this. Both of us have never seen this, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, Brandon, that is correct. I've never seen the show.
Yeah, and so, Mom, are you able to go ahead and get started?
Yes, this goes back to one of our first episodes, and so we'd like to explore that one. Living single overall is really about three women who kind of live together, plus an additional friend who's also involved with their little group.
Well, Mom, thank you so much for that.
You are welcome, Brandon.
And Mom, overall, what did you think about this first episode? What did you learn from it?
Well, let's talk about. I do. Thank you for asking that, Brandon. We, for someone who had not watched the show, it was interesting to see what I did learn about this first particular episode. Um, what I've learned is really about the careers of the women in this particular episode and kind of the friendship that they do have together. Um, First of all, we learned that Regine, one of the main characters, she refers to kind of owning a boutique. We also know that Regine has a great love for men. We learned that Khadijah is an owner of an urban magazine. We learned that Sinclair actually works for Khadijah, and she's the character who kind of appears kind of flighty. We learned that their friend Maxine is a lawyer. We learned that out of the group that Regine, Khadijah, and Sinclair, they all kind of share a house together or a room together, and that and then we also learn about two gentlemen who are involved. They're Overton and Kyle. We know that Kyle is a handyman, and Overton at that point in time, I don't think they say exactly what he does. Overall, you kind of wonder what the purpose of the men are in this particular episode. But like I said, we're only referring to the first episode and not series wise. And I think overall, we learned that they are just a group of friends who support each other and help each other out.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's what we largely learn. And unlike some first episodes, I don't, to the best of my knowledge, I don't see any initiating events in this episode.
No, and I think that's what made it a little harder. And we've talked about this a little off camera, but with because there was not necessarily an initiating event, it was harder to kind of put all the pieces together. Like I say, we learn quite a bit about each of the characters in the sense of what they do, but we don't learn about them personally, except for Regime. We really don't learn about them personally, and that if you're asking if something was missing from this episode, it was that one piece of not knowing their personalities, not quite shining as much as with some other first episodes that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think that really made it a bit difficult, especially since we truly have no familiarity with anything. I don't, and like for me, I don't really even have a sort of general synopsis to go off of, other than just recognizing some of the actors.
Yeah, and that was the same for me too. And it was hard for me because I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about more in deep about the show, but the first particular episode didn't quite lead to that. And I decided not to watch the second episode because I was very tempted to watch the second episode to kind of lead into it because I figured that the first episode was just really trying to establishing what everyone does, and that the second episode would kind of go into a little bit more meat of the show. But I kind of wanted to base kind of like what we try to do with just the first episode only.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard because it's hard sometimes for us to sort of make these reviews just off of a single episode, especially one that we truly have no familiarity with.
Yeah, and I know it was on when I was younger, and I do not know what came on opposite at the time period and what I was watching instead of this. So, I mean, I remember seeing the show, but I just didn't watch the show at the time period.
Yeah, and so overall, like, would you consider watching based off of this first episode, like another episode, or did this even remind you of like some other shows that we've seen?
Yeah, it did remind me of some other shows that we've seen. Would I continue watching it? I do kind of want to watch a couple more episodes because it was on for 5 years, and I know a lot of people did watch the show, and so I would like to see how it progresses a little bit, and to see what happens in the second or third episodes. Like I said, I just hadn't seen any reruns or anything, so I would like to go ahead and watch a few more episodes to kind of lead you into these group of people who live together.
Yeah, and I definitely would, watch another episode or two as well. And I don't know if, for me if it would be necessarily episode two. Maybe I might like go a little bit further in, just to sort of see how everything is after everything's established. Because I'd like to see like what their like what a traditional day to day episode is. I mean, I did like the camaraderie between them, especially towards the end. But I think it was hard not really knowing much at the beginning.
Yeah, I really like the little dance they did at the end. I mean, that was really cute. But yes, if I would like to, I just want to see how it kind of progresses.
Yeah, definitely. And since we were mentioning earlier, like some shows that might remind us of, for me, the premise overall of this episode, or the way I thought about this first episode, made me think a little bit as to how the Golden Girls started, in the sense that it sort of also took us right into the action for that first episode, which we've spoken about as well. Is that in that one, Blanche is working to get married, but at the time we don't really know who Blanche is or any of these other characters, but we're just sort of thrown to the action in this episode of Living Single. I mean, Regine's dating this man. I mean, but we find out he's a married man. And that's really all we really learn, per se, other than the names of the characters and a little bit about their careers, as you mentioned. So to me, I think that this is the one I feel most similar to, especially since, as of right now, most of what we know about these characters are similar to the Golden Girls characters,
Yeah,
broad sense.
actually, in broad sense, yes. And I immediately, and we talked about this too. I did think about the Golden Girls as soon as I watched this episode because I immediately there were three characters that I kind of parallel to three of the characters on the Golden Girls. And so yes, I did think about that too.
And are there any characters of Living Single thus far that you would be like specifically interested in learning more about as the show progresses?
Actually, I'd like to learn more about Khadijah because she's a very strong character. And so I'd really like to see how she kind of progresses through the show. I'd like to see her magazine because I think that's great that she's an entrepreneur and that she is the owner of this urban magazine. And I'd like to see, what they allow this character to do and how she grows the magazine. So yeah, so I would like to see, how that character kind of progresses through.
Yeah, and likewise, in watching the episode, I very much, you know, was able to follow Kadisha's character, and so I'd love to learn more about Kadisha, and I'd like to learn more about Max as well.
Yeah, Max is the lawyer, so yes, she would be an interesting person to kind of follow along with also. And I will say this because I know at least three out of four of these characters in different roles. I know that for some of them, this is a completely different role for them to play. For example, Kim Fields being Tootie off the Facts of Life, and Queen Latifah. I know of course she was a recording artist, and then the character who played Max came from the Cosby Show. And so, it's nice to see that they all were able to, work together, especially in changing their personalities that they had in these other realms that they played.
Yeah, and I was going through a little bit earlier before we did this recording, the Wikipedia page of the list of all of the guest stars that have been on the show, and so I'm excited to see some of these the guest stars like in roles, as some of them seem to be as themselves, some as different characters, and so um, I'm overall excited to learn more about the show because, as I said, it did go on for a long time, and truly, we don't know a lot about it.
No, we don't, and I should know about it. But it was during that time period that something else was on at that time, so I know I just didn't watch it, and so I just like to kind of re-explore at this time period.
Yeah, but Mom, is there anything else that you want to mention? Oh, the theme song.
Oh, the theme song. The theme song was cute. I'll give you the theme song was cute. And then as for ratings, I know we've been trying to rate our shows, and keep in mind that my rating is based upon the first episode only, that 1 through 5, 5 being the highest. I almost, for this one, I kind of had to give this one a 2. And I had to give it a 2 because there was just, to me, a lot of overacting in this episode. Um, and so, or I should say, over the top overacting for some of the characters. And so, which is why I kind of want to go back and watch episodes 2 and 3. Maybe we'll re-explore at a later time period to give my thoughts at a later time. But I'd like to see what happens later with this particular show.
Yeah, and for me, I had to debate about how I want to, and I think I'm gonna go like give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt, and I'm gonna go about 2.5. And more so because I could sort of see a little bit about the characters, and by the end of it, specifically at that dancing scene, that I felt like I knew the characters a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what's hard is obviously we haven't seen anything more to know like, oh, well, this sets up for this, or you can sort of see the inner workings, whereas we don't know what we're setting up for, and especially being a first episode, we've seen quite a bit of these to know that some things can change vastly from 1 to 2.
I know. Oh, and something else that kind of popped up too as a correlation is not only with Kim Fields, of course, affects life, what we talked about previously, but the house that was shown in the first episode, it looks like the first episode only, was from Family Matters. And so I got a kick out of that, seeing that they used that particular setting for the first episode.
Yeah, you definitely brought that up right away, and I think we had just clicked through like about like 12 seconds of another episode to see if it was changed, and it was changed. I don't remember which episode we clicked on though.
Yeah, I think it was the second episode. We saw that it had changed.
But yeah, but Mom, is there anything else that you want to mention for Living Single?
No, I can't think of anything else that I want to mention about Living Single at this time.
Well, something that I just thought about too, that I had researched a little bit, is that we do have a connection with the director of the episode.
Oh, what's our connection, Brand?
So the director of the episode, Tony Singletary, they had also directed an episode 227 that we have discussed, that being the episode The Sidewalk Sale, episode 7, for that one video that we discussed 3 different episodes, since 227 had series premiere at episode 1, a pilot at episode 6, and then we discussed episode 7. So they directed episode 7.
Okay. Oh, that sounds great. Sounds great. All right, Brandon, I look forward to talking to you about more TV shows this month. I think this month we're talking about some shows that we have not seen before. And so we'll have an interesting discussion.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it. And Mom, I always love doing this with you.
All right, same to you, Brandon. All right, everybody have a great day.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.